Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from BoardGameCo, and it's time for another week in review. This is going to be take 3 because the first 2 takes were interrupted by a toddler deciding that it's not bedtime after all. We'll see how take 3 goes. Secondly is, yes, this video is going to be titled something along the lines of, week in review, response to KOA, because that is going to be the topic of the week. I will be talking about King of Average's response video to my video. I'm not doing another video. I'm just going to bury it in the week in review. But yeah, that's going to be the topic of the week. We'll talk about that. Speaking of which, if you're new here, if you're new to the week in review, it's going to be a bunch of news. Various news segments, things around the board game space, upcoming releases, going to be a topic of the week, what I played, and finally, well then, all the videos of the week, which is actually the original point, in case you missed anything, want to pay attention, and then lastly, the games on the couch, talking about those, and why I hope to play them, and all of that. So, starting off the bat with various news things, not a ton of news in the board game space. We had a few small things. We had Stonemeyer Games, who I've talked about their blog in the past. Jamie Stegmaier puts out a newsletter on a regular basis, and this week he actually did something based off of one of my videos. He did I had a video, top 5 reasons your campaign will fail, and he took that and expanded to 10 reasons and put a more delicately, accurately named why it will fail or not do as well as it could have. I'll throw a link to that below, but basically solid content around extrapolating off my list of 5 and then taking it up to 10. Watch It Played had a video, 10 years in the industry. What's his name? Rodney Smith has been doing videos for 10 years now. I remember watching him way back with Super Dungeon Explorer. It was going to be when I first started watching Watch It Played. And I didn't like that game at all, by the way. I really didn't like that game. But I watched it play to learn how to play the game. And that was a long, long time ago. But Rodney Smith has been around for a very long time. And hopefully he's around for a very long time as well. Because he's cool. I like his stuff. He's a very positive influence in the space. Shelf Stories. Shelf Stories had 2 videos, I think. He for sure had a video called Previews versus Reviews. Talking about the previews for the space. I don't know if it's called that. But it's about previews in the space. And then I believe on Friday, I say I believe because it's not Friday yet, I believe on Friday he has another video about bias, which is going to be interesting because we're going to be talking about that a lot in this video. Then in game news. Game news, we have a whole bunch of small stuff. Thunder Road had Thunder Road's an older game that they're coming with a new version, Thunder Road Vendetta, so they're being re-released with, new stuff, basically attacking each other on a race, similar to Death Roads, which is a video I did this week. We have King's Dilemma, or more specifically, the Queen's Dilemma, is going to be an expansion or standalone or something to the King's Dilemma. That's going to be coming from Horrible Guild. We have Wonder Book, which is a pop-up adventure game. I've only seen one pop-up book before. It was, I think, Shivers was the name of it. That one looked a little more escape room kind of situation. I wasn't confident in that one. This one, to be very clear, I'm not confident either. As soon as you have a pop-up book, it's a question of, does that add to the actual mechanics, or is it a little gimmick to make people pay attention? Could be both, but I'm always a little wary. Looks gorgeous. The pictures of it look gorgeous, but either way, we had that. Unmatched announced, Volume 2 is coming out with a bunch of characters. I think they had Bloody Mary, or they had a few characters. I can't remember who they had, but they had a bunch of new characters announced there. We have Buried Treasure. Not buried treasure, but buried treasure, like, blueberry, strawberry, that kind of buried treasure, which is a little card drafting game with a berry theme and treasure and a cute little name. That's going to be impossible to search for. Every time you try to tell people the name of the game, you're going to have to tell them exactly what to actually look for. You're going to be like, no, not buried treasure, buried treasure. It's going to be impossible. Google's going to be auto-correcting you left, right, and center. Clever name, but remember the name, remember the game? That's not a fun thing to search for. This is probably going to be not as bad as that, but not great. And then finally, Brew's announced from Pandasaurus Games. That's not a news announcement, but I know it's been delayed a few times, and that finally landed and is available to buy and all of that. Which brings us to the topic of the week, response to KOA. So some context here. Some general context is going to be, I put out a video last week saying no one is buying positive reviews. And I wasn't clear enough, I guess. I said it in the video, but I didn't double down on how important that distinction was. I was literally talking about no one's buying positive reviews. I didn't mean anything but bias. I didn't mean paid previews. I meant no one is paying money to secretly get a positive review behind the scenes. When you see a channel saying, we love this game, and there's no paid coverage tag, it probably just means they love the game. But either way, that was a whole kind of a down a rabbit hole of people talking about paid content for previews, which is different. And then lots of conversations about bias, which is why I did a video this week on bias. We'll talk about that soon. But also, King of Average put out a full response video saying people are paying for reviews. I agree with basically everything he said in that video. I don't think he was disagreeing with me on many points. And we've talked, by the way. He and I have talked. We actually have a video coming up shortly. But I'm going to go through a bunch of high points in this video because I mostly agree with them. Some of them I even covered this week in my video that I did earlier this week on Thursday about bias in games. So let's go ahead and go through a bunch of his points. And again, it's on me. I should clarify that. It was, I did clarify, I should have made it more clear that I'm not talking about paid previews and I'm not talking about bias. I was talking about literally secret behind the scenes deals. Now to begin with, off the bat, he started with saying that he agreed with me that I said it was stupid or short-sighted, and he's agreeing with that. But he's saying that people do stupid and short-sighted things. He's right. I was wrong on that point. Just because something is stupid or short-sighted does not mean it isn't done. That said, the distinction I will make is I believe the people who are doing stupid or short-sighted things are going to be very, very small channels that don't really have a following. The Dice Towers of the world, who else does reviews? Lots and lots of other people do reviews. The various other channels of the world, sorry, I'm blanking on Dice Tower there, all the larger channels that in any way do any form of coverage are likely not engaging in stupid and short-sighted things. Likely. It's possible I'm wrong, but King of Average is correct that just because something is short-sighted does not mean it won't be done. It just means that in the long run it won't work out well for the people doing it. So I'll give him that point. Then he talked about the lack of negatives. He talked about the lack of negatives, how if you see a lack of negatives in content, then that inherently means there's going to be some form of bias or whatnot. I actually disagree with him on that one, and he already, because I spoke to him separately, he agrees. The downside of doing the type of content that he and I both do, where we look at a camera, we talk to the camera, and we ramble, and we don't script, is the fact that we'll say something meaning this, but technically we say something that could apply to that, and we don't actually mean that. We mean this, but we say it in a way that could apply a little more broadly, and then someone corrects us, and we're like, yes, not that, obviously. So, I mean, yes, the fact that something could have no negatives does not mean this bias. It could mean a variety of other things. It could mean that, in the rare case, someone who actually really genuinely just loves a game. There are very few games that I can't come up with negatives for, but some of them you're not trying to. Some of them you're like, I really love this game and I don't have any obvious critiques. That might be obvious. Also, there are going to be channels that just don't like doing negative content. It doesn't mean that there's bias. It might mean they just don't want to be negative of things. They just want to talk about all the things they love. Lots of channels do that. Kissplaining actually did a video this week as well. Kissplaining did another video about that exact aspect. I'll link to it below, talking about the desire to not be negative. So a lack of negatives does not inherently mean this bias, but other than that, I would agree with King of Average that people who are trying to be critical, people who are looking for critical feedback and critical coverage as to why a game wasn't right for them or may not be right for you, even if they overall love the game, then yeah, you can generally find negatives in that sense. He talked about softball critiques, which is a great point. I love that one. Softball critiques is going to be the idea that instead of saying you hated something, you talk about how it wasn't right for you. You kind of ease up on your language to a degree, and I do that a lot, to be very clear. I will, and it's actually interesting, the example he gave, I was not being softball and Quacklope was being softball, but the general idea of softball critiques, I completely agree with. It's a tactic that I engage with on a regular basis because my goal is, and there's two reasons for softball critiques. The first is to not burn bridges, which will be his next point, and the second is because something that isn't right for me does not inherently mean it's not right for you. A softball critique is another way of saying, here's the thing that you need to be aware of, but it's not necessarily something it's not gonna make me frustrated. So, for instance, I have a few reviews, and if you look at any of my reviews for games that are 2s, I usually try to be, a 2 for me is a game that is not for me, I don't want to play it again. Let's take Pipeline or Cusco, any of these, and I have a few upcoming as well. Generally, I try to sound as positive as possible while telling you all the reasons a game is not right for me. I will not say that a game was stupid or horrible or a waste of my time, even if I kind of feel that way. Instead, I'll say, this game was like incredibly elegant in the options it gives you, but nothing fun happened along the way. They're both giving you that same coverage, the same aspect. But it's important to distinguish that for 2 reasons. One is the selfish aspect of not wanting to burn a bridge. 2 is because it's relevant. There are a bunch of games. Pipeline is a great example. Pipeline is a game that's well loved and I don't want to ever play it again. So I tell you about the things that are very positive while softening the things that are negative and why it's not for me, but while telling you those points. The example he gave was specifically with ISS Vanguard of the gameplay of the gameplay aspect being weak, the mechanics of the game being weak versus light. And I agree with him. Those are distinctions. But softball critiques is something that I absolutely will try to engage in as much as possible. Again, both selfishly and because it's a reflection of who something is right for or not. Speaking of which, the second reason is going to be to not burn bridges. And he talked about that aspect of not wanting to burn bridges, that people have to be mindful, or people choose to be mindful of not burning bridges or not. And again, something I agree with. I think people should be willing to burn bridges, But that being said, I don't think burning bridges inherently makes your content better or more accurate. I think you can often deliver relevant feedback while not burning bridges along the way. Whenever I have rated a game a 2, I have reached out to the person, to the publisher who sent me the game, if they sent me the game. Not all times am I doing a review as I sent the game, but whenever someone has sent me a game and I rated a 2, I will reach out and say, hey, I'm really sorry I didn't love it. Hopefully I was fair in my coverage of it. No one loves it, to be very clear. It's not like I ever got in a giant, thank you, Alex, so much. We love that you rated our game at 2, and thanks for letting us know. No one loves it. But that said, they often respect it, and especially if you were fair in your coverage of it. I will do everything I can to not burn bridges, but I also don't want to burn bridges with my audience. The Great Wall is a great example in this one. I put a review of The Great Wall up this week, and I spent a decent amount of time complaining about Awakened Realms' lack of progress in the way that they are dealing with rulebooks or some small sloppy mistakes. And by the way, none of those things really bother me. None of them. The same way I sat there and played and loved Etherfields, I don't care if a rulebook is hard to get through, and the rulebook wasn't that hard to get through, but it had sloppy mistakes in it. I don't care. I don't care at all. But if I don't talk about those things, if I don't bring those things up, like I really legitimately do not care at all about those things, they are small irritations to learning a game that is otherwise a ton of fun. But if I don't bring those things up, then I'll burn bridges with the audience. I'll have a bunch of people saying, hey, Alex didn't talk about the rulebook issues, that's because he's a shameless shill for Awakened Realms. First of all, Awakened Realms makes awesome games, so go jump in the lake. Secondly I have to talk about negatives whether or not they bother me, because you have to be concerned with burning bridges with your audience just as much as the publisher. I try to be as transparent and fair with both, and inherently that means I will have some audience people who think that, audience viewers or whatever, who will think that I'm not being fair enough to the audience, and I'll have publishers who will think I'm not being fair enough to them. You're never going to make everyone happy. I will do my best to try to be transparent. But yeah, you do have to be mindful of burning bridges. You have to be willing to burn bridges, but burning bridges does not inherently make your content better, more accurate, or more honest. There's often a way to balance it as much as possible. Cash payments. He spent a little time talking about cash payments and how he'll get emails from people saying, hey, what's your fee for a review? And I agree with him. I get those things too. The difference is I wasn't saying no one gets paid for coverage. I was saying no one gets paid for positive coverage. Now, is there bias there? 100% yes. That goes back to the bias conversation. But people will pay. There's a lot of time and energy that goes into a review. Especially if you're editing or if you're doing gameplays or whatever you're doing, there can be anywhere between playing the game and filming and doing all this stuff. There can be anywhere between 2 hours to 10 plus hours to review a game. And that's a lot of time. People will offer money for that. Now, hopefully, if the person is not being short-sighted and stupid, then they will then put the tag out and be clear about it. Will it introduce bias? 100%. My video specifically was about the idea of there is no concept out there where someone is secretly taking money to give you a paid positive review of a game and you're just like, well, they're a shill for that company or something. That's just not happening there. I talked about adding reviews onto other content. This is something I've seen a few channels do, like for instance, Quacklope has done this in the past, where he has a paid relationship where he did gameplay for a game, and then he does a review of it, which is not related to that. Now, I can't speak for every channel. I can't speak for Quacklope. When he does that, I can tell you that it's coming from a place of, oh wow, I really, really like this game, I want to be in the review for it. Now, if he hated the game, well, first of all, just separately, probably shouldn't be telling this stuff, but separately, I can tell you for a fact, I know Quacklope has turned down money if he did not like a game. So that's relevant there, if he thought a game was bad. But there is a difference between a game being good or great. There is a difference there as well. And I think it's entirely possible that someone says, hey, I know I got paid for X, but I'm really excited about this game and I want to talk about it, so I'm going to do a review for it as well. Is there bias? Of course there's bias. Do I think that they'll be willing to do a negative review in that relationship? No, I don't. I don't think it means the positive review is fake. I just think you're likely going to see selective content. You'll see a positive review when they felt strongly positively about the game and it was not paid for. They just want to share their excitement. And I think that if they have a paid relationship, they might be less willing to be negative. I think it's a balance there, but it's a bit of an interesting point in that sense. And then lastly, confirmation bias. King of Average, KOA, talked about the sense of confirmation bias, that people are always looking for what they want. There are going to be people out there who backed a game and spent $200 on a Kickstarter, and they're looking for the various content creators who will tell them how good that game is. And I think that's true. I think you'll always be dealing with confirmation bias. Always. I think it goes in both directions. You will see people who are looking for reviewers and trying to find all the biases and reasons that reviewer is lying to them. often because they chose not to get the game. That's often a factor. I think a big part, I'm going to do a video on this at some point, but I think a big part of the space is when you talk about these Kickstarters, especially with Kickstarter, you're often going to have two types of people. Well, three types of people. There's going to be the people in the middle, which are a big portion. You're going to have the people who spent a lot of money and are looking to justify their purchase and will rate games more highly, look for reviews that talk about the game more highly, and convince themselves that their $200 or more game was worth paying for. But you'll also have people on the other side. You'll have people who are looking at the Kickstarter games and saying, I can't afford or choose not to spend $200 on a game. And some of those people are totally fine with that, and others will also be biased against it. Because they couldn't spend $200 on the game, it is helpful, it is beneficial to convince themselves that anyone who likes that game is a shill, or just doesn't understand how a good game is, or they're being bought by all the shiny plastic. People will seek for reasons to justify their decisions, those decisions both being decisions about backing games, as well as decisions about choosing not to back games for practical reasons that might make sense. But it's easier to then say everyone else who got the $200 game is overpaying for that junk game that had issues and this and that, and reviewers are biased. I think confirmation bias is a real thing in this space in both directions. Which brings us to the week in review. Week in review. So let's go ahead and open this up. Dun, 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 and pull up my week in review, what I've played this week. I've missed a bunch of plays. To be very clear, I know this already. I didn't log anything since Wednesday of last week. I played a bunch of games. Today, I finally filled in my games. Usually when I wait that long, it means I miss a bunch. I have like 11 or 12 games played. I know I've played more. But either way, let's go ahead and jump into it. So, first of all, we have more Chronicles, Drunagor, Age of Apocalypse. I played the first games with Jesse, and then we finished it off solo. We'll have more throughout the week. We have Welcome to Dino World. I played Welcome to Dino World with Rena, where slowly, I talked about this last week, we're slowly going through all our roll-in rights so that we can do a full video on our top 10 favorite roll-in rights. We have most already, but we're clearing out the rest that we haven't played yet. Hadrian's Wall is like one page of the rulebook left to go through. Really, it should be on the table, but I talked about it last week. We have Steam Watchers. I got my first game of Steam Watchers in. I am going to be getting some more games in. There will be a review coming on that. We have Marvel United. I continue to pull up Marvel United whenever I have a chance. I'm still enjoying it. I still like it a lot. I still haven't sleeved all my cards. I need to do that. But I've sleeved most of my stuff. Although I had someone ask for a hero that wasn't sleeved this week, so that was unfortunate. Terraforming Mars, Ares Expedition. Yes, I'm still playing that. Yes, we'll talk about it later. Cockroach Poker. Cockroach Poker has actually taken a bit of a break in this house. It's been a game that I play a ton, and we've been playing it a lot to finish up all game nights. For the past, I want to say maybe 2 months, we hadn't actually pulled it out, but we got like 4 or 5 plays in as a finishing up to Saturday gaming, and had a lot of fun with it. I love Cockroach Poker. It's always a blast to play. Why do I feel like I'm missing something? We had that. I'm missing something on Saturday. I'm missing some things. Black Sonata. Black Sonata is a fun little solo game from Gaming Goats. I'll have a review coming out on that one. Well, Gaming Goat is the distributor. I don't know who someone, either way. But Black Sonata, I got 4 or 5 games of that. It's a solo hidden movement deduction game. It's fascinating. I'll have a review on it. Whoever came up with the concept and executed on that, brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. They did an amazing job of actually having a hidden movement game. It's a hidden movement game where the AI is moving around the board, and then you as the player have a way of actually checking whether you're right or not right and all of that. Brilliant in the design. Black Sonata, got a bunch of games of that. We have Dice Throne. I did a playthrough of Dice Throne in preparation. Last week I talked about how I wanted to play Dice Throne Adventures, and to get warmed up again, since my wife and I have not played Dice Throne in a while. We got a play of Dice Throne. We filmed that. That'll be up on the channel. Either way, it'll be up on the channel. And then Dice Throne Adventures, we hope to get to, not tonight probably, but hopefully soon, we'll see. Chronicles Drunagor, Age of Apocalypse, more of that. Chronicles Drunagor, Age of Apocalypse. And then, this is a fun one. Masters of the Universe, Clash for Eternia. I had a chance to play the Command Masters of the Universe game. I will talk about that at a later date. And that is going to be what I've played, or at least what I've recorded I've played. I need to look around the basement. I know I have more things I played. I played a lot of things last week, but I forgot to get them all. I played Four Gardens. I missed that one. What else? I'm just looking around the basement here. I know, see, I know I missed Four Gardens. Either way, let's go ahead and jump into the week in review. So, week in review, and I'm running on a bit of a clock here. I think I have like 8 minutes, so let's go ahead through this. Number 1. Last Saturday, I did reviews for Bantam West and Death Roads. Death Roads All-Stars, great game, lots of fun. It's a little rolling around a racetrack and blowing people's cars up. I really enjoy it. It's a solid game. It's going to be similar to Thunder Roads to a degree, although Thunder Roads is an older game with a reboot. Bantam West is a game that I liked the original game a lot. It's continued to get more and more complex in a way that I think adds to the game, but also has made it harder for me to jump in since those changes and get a full experience of it. So it was a weird review where I was like, I really like this and here are the changes and things. But overall, I think it's a solid game. I think if you like like Western Legends and you want more, Bantam West is excellent. I think if you like Western Legends and you don't want more, Western Legends is excellent. Really, at some point, I hope to do a play this, not that. Likely will not be doing the Kickstarter. Will likely be with the final production copies when those come. On Sunday, and for context, by the way, both those games I want. I just need to figure out where they end up long term. Sunday was going to be Upping Your Game. It's another one of those deluxeification videos that I do once a month. I aim for once a month on those. This one featured a whole bunch of metal coins and some inserts and some 3D bits. Lots of fun little things. Fun stuff. I like metal coins a lot. I like adding them to games. And the Folded Space insert physicalities is a lot of fun. Monday was the top 10 Kickstarters I shouldn't have backed. It was a light week, too light for to back or not to back. So I skipped that this week. We'll be having it next week, don't worry. But anyways, I did, instead of that, top 10 Kickstarters I should not have backed. Specifically, Kickstarters I shouldn't have backed at the time, given what I knew at the time. It wasn't like regrets. Because like the first one I had is Cthulhu May Die, and I had a bunch of people saying, well, why shouldn't you have backed it? You liked it. Again, I need to clarify my thoughts more so people don't have those questions. But specifically, the point of the video was about things I shouldn't have backed at the time, regardless of whether I like them after or not. Just the general example I would give is, if you mortgage your entire home to buy a bunch of lottery tickets and you win, you shouldn't have done that, even if it works out well in your favor. Never look to the exceptions, never look to the things that worked out as a rule for why you should continue to do things that are not ideal. Then Tuesday we had the Great Wall review, speaking of which, and this is an interesting one. I had to go into the comments to explain to a bunch of people that A, the rulebook didn't stop me from learning the game. I thought I made that clear, but perhaps not. It was easy enough to learn, but there were still issues with the rulebook. And B, people thought I was like, oh yeah, Alex, you went for like a 5-minute rant against Awakened Realms and you still gave it a 4 to 5. I thought you didn't like it at all. No, I told you in the review, I thought The Great Wall is an amazing game. It's a lot of fun. It has powers and abilities. It has tableau building, the things I like. It has worker placement. I have complaints, but most of those complaints are small and nitpicky. The gameplay complaints, I think I only had 2. I think there was a little bit of a lack of thematic immersion of the Horde. I felt that was one. I think there's something else. Oh yeah, the cards that you play didn't really feel, it felt like it was a little bit kind of a weird aspect of when you play this card, look to see that card, and I didn't feel it really added anything. But the game itself was a lot of fun with minor nitpick complaints, but then I complained about other aspects in a separate section, specifically a separate section. But overall, the Great Wall is solid. If you backed it and you like worker placement, if you like tableau building, I think it's going to deliver for you in a bunch of ways. Later Tuesday was King of 12. Small little review for a lighter trick-taking game from Lucky Duck involving a die. It's a lot of fun. It actually ends up being far more laughter than anything else, but I really enjoy playing that one. On Wednesday, we had 2 things. We had a debate on whether larger companies should be on Kickstarter. Yes, I know, Quackalope and I, when we do our debates, we kind of talk over each other a lot. It's something we're working on. We have to figure out a structure, because if it's too rigid, then it won't be as fun. But if it's not rigid enough, then we're talking over each other. We need to figure out a balance. Overall, the format seems to be really enjoyed by people, but yes, we can absolutely improve upon it. Later on Wednesday, we had a Scarface final update. This was not a planned video, but Scarface added enough things and I had enough questions that I throw in unplanned videos here and there because people ask for it. If I get 15 people asking me the same thing in comments, at that point I usually just put out a video instead. It's easier and it's relevant. I think it's relevant information. Scarface, I was very mixed on the should you back it or not, and in the final week they added enough things that I moved from mixed to this is a fairly decent back. Not the best back, but a fairly decent back. On Thursday was 2 things. We had Bias and Board Games. Bias and Board Games, which is a video, like I said already. That's the follow-up to my No One's Paying for Negative Reviews. Keep in mind, I'm filming this before that video has gone up, so I don't have a chance to respond to your comments. If it's enough stuff that are relevant, I will talk about it next week's Week in Review. But yeah, Bias and Board Games. I basically went through a whole bunch of different forms of bias and how I think they personally affect me. Obviously, I'm biased when I say so. I can only tell you how I think I'm dealing with the bias. I cannot tell you how I am perfect at it. I can try to be as transparent as possible, and I think it affects me this way. I think I deal with that way. Doesn't mean I'm perfect. The nature of bias is it can be subconscious as well as conscious. And also, by the way, I did say in that video that there will be a Cassidy game table video going up later that day. That got pushed, unfortunately. They have a longer story, but not my call. They pushed it off, so that video is going to be going up next week instead. But then later that day, I believe I have a review for Four Gardens going up later on Thursday. That's going to be a review from Arcane Wonders for Four Gardens, which, again, like I told you already, I played it again this week. I actually did it after my review for what it's worth, by the way. So I did the review, and then I got a gameplay of it in with Quackalope, so we'll see how that goes. And then Friday was what we backed with Mina, so covering the June Kickstarters, what we backed and all that. Boring week in the sense that Rena wasn't interested in actually backing anything. She kind of hesitated on Isle of Cats whether to push me into backing that or not, but I think between the price point and the fact that we didn't really play it enough when we had it, I think she was not pushing me into backing that one. I'm still kind of interested in the expansions, but it's a tough one. A lot of money to double down on a game that I already got rid of, and so that was going to be Isle of Cats. And then later on Friday we had Chronicles Drunagor Apocalypse review, because Jesse and I together did a full review of it. He and I both played the game. We went through it, and we both played the original a little bit together. I played the original more on my own, and then we went into Chronicles Drunagor Age of Apocalypse, and solid game, or Age of Darkness Apocalypse, whatever it's called. But solid improvement over the original. It very much took a Wild Descent kind of situation. Wild Descent Levon Rising was basically Wild Descent with much better campaign. Other elements too, but much better campaign. Similar over here. My highlight for Drunagor for Apocalypse is going to be the campaign story is much better. There are other small things that I like, mostly like, I would say, but overall the difference in the campaign play are going to be the biggest difference there. And then later today, we have a review going up for Oros. Oros is going to be an upcoming Kickstarter this coming week. Make sure you pay attention to that one. Very interesting game, very clever, very looking forward to it. A solid job, one-man team, did amazing across the board. And then next week, we're going to have to back or not to back. We'll have the Cassidy game table, unless that gets pushed off again. And then we're going to have a bit of a Terraforming Mars apology tour going up Sunday. So you can pay attention to that one. I don't know if I'm calling it an apology tour. We'll figure it out. But basically some updates around Terraforming Mars Ares Expedition. And then the games on the couch. So these are the things I hope to play. I actually hope to play My City in about 45 minutes. I hope to play it. We'll see. But I hope to get that going it's a legacy game with Polyominoes. I've been pushing it off for a while. I'd love to play that. Beyond the Sun, I would love to play this tomorrow night. I've heard so many good things about this one. This is basically spreadsheets, which sounds like an amazing thing with upgrade paths and voting on upgrades together. I'm really looking forward to this one. I really hope I get to play it. Again, I'm usually about 50-50 on actually playing these. Divinus is going to be played. Absolutely not a question. Don't know exactly when. I would love to play it later tonight. I'd love to. I don't know if I will or not, but that's Divinus. And then Flamecraft is another game that I've actually already played and reviewed this one, but I would like to continue playing it because it's cute and adorable and it has little dragons and they're cute and adorable. I think I said that already. But that is basically everything. That has been your week in review. Thanks so much for sticking around. It looks like this take was successful, which means the toddler is actually asleep this time. Or he's wandering around upstairs causing mischief, but that seems less likely. He usually likes to find me when he wanders out of bed. In any case, I am Alex Radcliffe from BoardGameCo. Thanks so much for being here as usual, and as always, have a good one. Thirdly is going to be Shelf Stories. Shelf Stories did a video this week of previews versus reviews, talking about that, and I believe, I don't know exactly based on when I'm filming this, but I believe he also has a video about bias. He's going to have a video about bias. You want to come here, buddy? You want to come here? Come? No, you want to come? Come. Okay, cool. We're just going to talk to the camera. Then he had a video about bias that he talked about. So he did a video about I believe he's doing a video on Friday about bias. I'll throw a link down below in case I get to that in time. And then it goes to Game News. Game News had a whole bunch of things. First of all, Thunder Road. Thunder Road is going to be a game that was a older game that they're coming out with a new version of it, Thunder Road Vendetta. The King's Dilemma, I missed this last week somehow. But King's Dilemma is going to have a sequel/expansion for Queen's Dilemma, so keep your eyes peeled for that. We have a Wonder Book. Wonder Book is going to be a pop-up game. Where are you going, bud? Okay, cool. Have fun. Wonder Book is going to be a pop-up game that is a pop-up book, basically, that opens into an adventure book. And it is...